They say we have something like 60,000 thoughts a day. But for me, for decades now, one thought, one question has always been there, louder than all the others. It's not some gentle whisper. It's more like a constant rumble beneath the surface of my everyday life. Did I do the right thing? Or did I silence the most vibrant part of myself for a future that wasn't entirely mine to live? That's a heavy thing to carry. You know, the weight of a dream you've put on hold, especially when you see little pieces of that dream, or maybe even brand new ones, blooming in the lives of the people you love. My name is Elara, and these lines on my face are the silver in my hair. They aren't just signs of getting older, they're a roadmap of choices, of laughter, oh yes, and tears, definitely. But mostly of one huge decision I made at a crossroads so many years ago. A decision that changed the course of my whole life. I was young once, you know, with a heart just brimming with dreams so vivid I felt like I could almost taste them. Dreams I chose to set aside for them, for my family. Now, this isn't a story looking for pity, and it's not some straightforward tale of heroic sacrifice. It's just a raw, honest look back. Me, still wrestling, even now, with the enormous emotional journey that kicked off with that choice and all the ripples, the ones I saw and the ones I didn't, that have spread through generations. And that central question, the one that still finds me in the quiet hours. I traded my dreams for their future. But was it worth it? Before you get to those choices that really define your life, there's that wide open field of pure possibility. And my field, it felt endless, painted with all the bright, exciting colors of what I wanted to be. I was a girl who lived in books, but not just reading them. I wanted to write to them. I dreamt of building worlds with words, of telling stories that would sweep people away, make them think, and make them feel. My mind was always buzzing with stories, characters just lining up, waiting for their turn on the page. I could almost see my name on the spine of a novel. Imagine the thrill of spotting it in a bookshop window. This wasn't just some passing phase. It was deep, a passion I felt right down to my bones, like a calling. I remember the smell of old libraries, the comforting heft of a dictionary, and the little zing when I'd craft a sentence just right. My notebooks were crammed with beginnings, lots of middles, but not too many ends. The world just seemed too full of new ideas to ever settle on just one. My teachers, they encouraged me. They saw something there. You have a gift, Elara. Mrs. Albright, my English teacher, told me once. Her eyes were kind but serious. Don't let it gather dust. Those words stuck with me and became a kind of promise I made to myself. And it wasn't just about writing. There was this ache for adventure, for experiences that would feed those stories. I dreamed of wandering cobblestone streets in faraway cities, of mountains that touched the sky, and of oceans holding ancient secrets. I wanted to see the world, not like a tourist, but like someone who really sees, a collector of moments and human stories. These weren't just lazy daydreams. They were actual plans, things I'd researched in atlases and travel books from the local library. I had this dog-eared map of the world pinned above my little desk, routes marked out in faded ink, a reminder of all the journeys I planned to take. This ambition, this burning need to create and explore, that was just me. It colored how I saw everything, how I interacted with people, and how I moved through the world. It was the engine of my young life, pushing me towards a future I truly believed was my destiny. A future where my voice would be heard, my stories read, and my footprints left on distant shores. The idea of not going after it, of actually turning my back on it, unthinkable. It would have been like asking me to stop breathing. Or so I thought. Little did I know, life, in its own infinite and often pretty harsh wisdom, was about to ask me to do just that. That vibrant canvas of my dreams, it was about to get painted over with the stark, demanding colors of need and love. A love that would ask for everything. Moving from those sunny days of youthful dreams to the shadowed valley of tough choices wasn't like falling off a cliff. It was more like the tide slowly, almost invisibly, turning. The waters of responsibility just kept rising, bit by bit, until I found myself standing on this shrinking little island of my own ambitions. The world I'd pictured, the one full of literary awards and worldwide adventures, started to fade as another world, one with immediate, urgent needs, snapped into sharp focus. It started when my father got sick. He'd always been the rock of our family, quiet and strong. Watching him decline so suddenly, it sent shockwaves through our little home. Then the medical bills started piling up like these awful snowdrifts, blocking every way forward. My mother, bless her heart, worked herself to the bone, her hands raw, her face etched with a worry that seemed to age her overnight. But what she earned as a seamstress could only go so far. I was young, just about to apply to university, my scholarship essays on literature and exploration almost done. Then Arthur came into my life, the man I'd end up marrying. He was kind and dependable, and he loved me with a faithfulness that was both a comfort and, well, a bit of a complication. We married young, maybe too young, pushed by a mix of love and this unspoken hope that two of us could handle the storm better than one. Our first child, Sarah, arrived sooner than we'd planned. A beautiful, demanding little miracle who instantly took over a piece of my heart I didn't even know was up for grabs. And then, not too long after, Michael was born. Those dreams of Parisian cafes and Himalayan treks started to feel like faint, almost forgotten songs. The buzz of stories in my head got drowned out by the cries of a hungry baby, the stress of an empty pantry, and that constant gnawing fear of not having enough. My father's condition got worse, needing more care and more expensive medicines. My mother's strength started to fray under all the pressure. Arthur worked every hour he could, but his job at the local mill, well, depended on an economy that was all over the place. The crossroads wasn't one single, dramatic moment, but a whole series of them. It was the day I looked at my manuscript, pages filled with the opening chapters of what I thought would be my great novel, and realized I hadn't written a single word in months. It was the evening I sat at the kitchen table, unpaid bills spread out like a losing hand of cards, while in the next room, Sarah was coughing. This dry, persistent sound that just squeezed my chest with fear. It was the conversation with Arthur, his face looking so drawn and tired in the dim light where we weren't talking about our dreams anymore, but about sheer survival. "I just don't see how we can manage, Elara," he'd said, his voice heavy with a weight no young man should have to bear. Not without more. That more hung in the air, unspoken but clear. It meant another income. It meant stability. It meant someone had to put their dreams aside for the real, immediate needs of the family. My desire to write and to travel started to feel like an indulgence, a selfish luxury, when reality was so harsh. How could I justify getting lost in fictional worlds when my real world was falling apart? How could I dream of seeing the globe when my kids needed new shoes, when my father needed medicine that might give him a few more comfortable months? That sense of duty, something I'd read about in epic poems, suddenly became this very real, personal thing. Love played its part too. A fierce, protective love for my children, a deep, compassionate love for my sick father and my tired mother, and a supportive love for my struggling husband. The battle inside me was huge, a silent, tearing war fought in the quiet moments between changing diapers and soothing fevers. It was the weight of their future pressing down on the delicate wings of my dreams. When the decision finally took shape, it wasn't some grand epiphany with angels singing or a sudden rush of noble feelings. It was more like a quiet giving in, a heavy sigh in the middle of the night. It was accepting a path I hadn't chosen, but felt like I had to walk. I clearly remember the moment I packed away my manuscripts, not in anger or bitterness, but with this deep, aching sadness. I put them in an old wooden chest, along with my dog-eared map of the world and the few travel books I owned. Closing that lid felt final, like shutting a door on a part of myself. It wasn't that the stories stopped or that the longing just vanished. They were just put away, muted, buried under layers of things that felt more urgent. I got a job as a clerk at the local council office. The work was dull, a million miles away from the vibrant places I'd wanted to explore or create. It was all ledgers, filing, and quiet typing in a beige room under fluorescent lights. But it was steady. It was a paycheck. It meant medicine for my father, food on the table, and a little bit of security for my children. Every day, walking to that office, I felt a piece of my spirit dimming, the bright colors of my inner world kind of fading to gray. Some days, the monotony was almost too much to bear, when the unwritten stories would just scream in my head, desperate to get out. I'd look out the window at the clouds drifting by and imagine them as ships sailing to faraway lands I'd probably never see now. Right after making that choice, it was a strange mix. Relief, but also this deep, gnawing grief for the life I was letting go. The relief came from seeing my family's burdens ease up, even just a bit. My father seemed more comfortable with the better care. My mother smiled a little more. Arthur's shoulders weren't quite so slumped. There was a quiet satisfaction in knowing I was helping, in a real way, to make their lives better. This was duty. This was love. Made real. But the grief, that was a constant companion. Not a dramatic, sobbing kind of sorrow, but a dull ache, a steady sense of loss that cast a shadow even over happy moments. It was that pang I'd feel when I saw a new book by an author I admired, wondering what stories I might have told. It was the wistful glance at a travel show on TV, a reminder of the adventures I'd given up. Sometimes this grief would sharpen into something almost like resentment, a fleeting bitterness I'd quickly push down, ashamed of what felt like my own selfishness. How could I mourn my lost dreams when my children were healthy and fed? How could I feel unfulfilled when I was so clearly needed? Wrestling with that inner conflict was constant. There were nights I'd lie awake long after the house was quiet, and the question would start spinning in my head. Had I made a mistake? Was there another way? Could I have fought harder for my dreams and taken care of my family? These questions never offered easy answers, just this recurrent feeling of being trapped. The dreams didn't die easily. They'd pop up at unexpected moments. A certain smell, a line of poetry, a child's imaginative game. And the longing would come rushing back, sharp and painful. I learned to push it down, to focus on what needed doing, on the small, everyday routines that made up my new life. It was a kind of self-preservation, a way to keep going without being swallowed by what might have been. The weight of that choice was like a heavy cloak I wore every day, its fabric woven with threads of sacrifice, love, duty, and a quiet, persistent sadness. So, life, having been rerouted, started to carve out its own path. The road I was on now wasn't glamorous, often pretty repetitive, but it wasn't completely empty either. The council office, with its predictable routines and muted colors, became the backdrop of my days. Those ledgers and files, which at first felt like symbols of my given-up dreams, slowly turned into a different kind of story. A story of financial stability, of bills paid on time, of small but real contributions to the family's well-being. There was a quiet dignity in that, a subtle strength I hadn't expected. The grand adventures I'd once pictured, trekking across continents, were replaced by smaller, more personal discoveries. A walk in the local park with my children, their little hands in mine, became a journey of seeing the world through their eyes. Rustling leaves were whispers from ancient trees. A patch of dandelions was a field of gold. Their laughter, the most beautiful music. Helping Sarah with her first attempts at writing and guiding Michael as he sounded out words in a picture book. These became my new literary projects. There was this deep, unexpected joy in seeing their small wins, a joy that soothed, though it never quite erased, the ache of my own unwritten stories. Still, the longing was always there, like a shadow. It would surface during quiet evenings after the kids were asleep, when the house settled into that stillness that let my own thoughts come out. I'd find myself staring out the window, not at the familiar streetlights, but at an imagined Parisian skyline, or a distant snow-capped mountain. The stubs of pencils and the blank pages of a notebook I still kept in a drawer. They were silent, almost accusing reminders. Sometimes a particular phrase or an idea for a story would hit me so hard I'd have to physically shake my head to clear it, to get back to the present, to the reality of lunches to pack and uniforms to mend. I developed coping mechanisms. They were vital for survival. I found comfort in small, stolen moments of creativity. I'd scribble bits of poetry on the back of grocery receipts, make up short, imaginative bedtime stories for the children, pouring just a tiny fraction of my bottled-up passion into these little outlets. Gardening became another escape. Tending to the small patch of dirt behind our house, coaxing life from the soil, watching flowers bloom from tiny seeds. It was a real act of creation, a way to nurture beauty in a life that often felt overwhelmingly practical. These small acts weren't replacements for the big dreams, but they were lifelines, ways to keep a part of my spirit from completely flickering out. There were moments when I was sharply aware of what I'd given up. A former classmate might publish a book, their name suddenly in the newspaper, or a travel documentary would show the very places I longed to visit. Those moments were like sharp pebbles in my shoe, a sudden uncomfortable reminder of the other Elara, the one who'd taken a different road. The resilience I built up wasn't born from some sudden acceptance, but from a slow, often painful, adaptation. It was the resilience of a tree that, even when pruned and held back, keeps reaching for the light, finding new ways to grow in the space it's given. My life was different, no doubt about it, from the one I'd imagined. It was a tapestry woven with fewer bright, adventurous threads, but with more and more strong, durable strands of family love, daily duties, and that quiet, enduring strength you find in just keeping on. The path was different, yes, but it was my path now, and I walked it with a growing, though sometimes heavy, sense of purpose. That decision, that quiet act of setting aside my own ambitions, started to bear fruit. Not for me, but for them. It was like planting a tree, knowing you might never sit in its shade or taste its fruit, but its growth still brings this deep, if indirect, satisfaction. The immediate effect was real, something you could measure in how the financial burdens that had once felt like they were suffocating us started to ease. My steady income, though not huge, combined with Arthur's constant hard work, built a foundation of stability our family desperately needed. My father spent his final years with a level of comfort and dignity that would have been impossible otherwise. We could get him the medicines he needed and take him to specialist appointments without that crushing anxiety of how we'd pay for it all. That, in itself, felt like a major win, a small repayment for the dreams I'd put on the shelf. My mother, relieved of some of the financial strain, found more moments of peace. Her smiles weren't so clouded by worry. For Sarah and Michael, the benefits were woven right into the fabric of their childhoods. They had shoes that fit, warm coats in winter, and always enough food on the table. These weren't luxuries, but they were securities that hadn't always been a given. More importantly, they had access to opportunities I could only have dreamed of for myself at their age if things had been different. Sarah, with her quick mind and endless curiosity, just devoured books. We could afford to buy them now, not just borrow them. She excelled in school, her reports full of praise from her teachers. There was a spark in her, a familiar hunger for knowledge and expression, and I nurtured it fiercely, maybe living a little through her budding intellect. Michael, quieter and more observant, developed a real talent for art. He'd spend hours sketching, his brow all furrowed in concentration, his drawing showing a surprising depth and sensitivity. We managed to afford art supplies, a small easel, and even a few lessons with a local artist. Watching his talent blossom was like watching a rare and precious flower unfurl. These were the immediate changes, a more secure present, and a foundation they could build their futures on. The long-term benefits started to show as they got older. Because of the stability we had painstakingly built, both Sarah and Michael were able to go to university. That was a milestone that filled Arthur and me with such immense pride. Sarah, true to her early promise, studied journalism, her words now reaching far beyond the classroom. Michael, after a lot of soul-searching, chose architecture, his artistic side finding a practical and creative outlet. These were paths that might have been closed to them if our family had stayed stuck in the financial struggles of their early childhood. There was a deep, almost sacred satisfaction in watching them achieve things. Each diploma, each award, each step they took towards fulfilling their own potential felt like a validation, even if an indirect one, of the choice I'd made. It wasn't my name on a book's spine, nor my feet on foreign soil, but it was my children, thriving, exploring their own talents and building their own dreams. The seeds I'd unintentionally sown, watered with my own deferred hopes, were growing into something strong and vibrant. The emotional toll on me was definitely part of this picture, a silent cost. But watching them step into futures brighter than the one I might have offered them otherwise, that was a powerful comfort. It wasn't my dream, but it was a dream, taking flight. As Sarah and Michael grew up and started making their own ways in the world, they began to understand more about the path I'd taken, the sacrifices I'd made. It wasn't something we talked about directly when they were younger. Arthur and I had always tried to shield them from the worries of our early struggles. But kids, they're sharp. They pick up on the unspoken things in a family, the subtle hints of regret or contentment, the shadows of past hard times. I remember a conversation with Sarah when she was in her early 20s, just starting out as the journalist. She'd come home for a visit, and we were sitting in the kitchen, the late afternoon sun slanting through the window. She'd been talking about a tough assignment and the pressures of her job, and then she paused, looking at me with an expression I hadn't seen before. A mix of understanding and a kind of gentle sorrow. "Mom," she started, a bit hesitantly, "I've been thinking a lot lately about your writing, about the stories you used to tell us, the ones you never got to write down for everyone." Her words just caught me off guard. It was like she'd peeked right into that locked wooden chest in my heart. I think I mumbled something about it being a long time ago, about different priorities. But she kept on, gently. You had real talent, didn't you? Big dreams. It wasn't an accusation, just a quiet acknowledgement. And in that moment, I felt this incredibly deep connection with my daughter. A feeling that she saw me not just as her mother, but as Elara, the woman who'd had dreams. Michael's recognition came in a different way. He was always less direct with words, more likely to show things through actions or observations. Once, after he'd hit a big milestone in his architecture career, he gave me this beautifully framed sketch, not of a building, but of an open book, its pages turning into soaring birds. Beneath it, he'd simply written, "For your stories, Mom, the ones you gave us room to write." It brought tears to my eyes, that quiet artistic nod to what he saw as my sacrifice. Their responses weren't all the same, nor were they always simple gratitude. There were times, especially during their more idealistic teenage years, when I sensed a flicker of something like frustration, maybe even a touch of guilt from them. A feeling that my unfulfilled potential was a burden they somehow carried. Sarah once confessed that she felt this huge pressure to succeed, not just for herself, but for me too, as if her achievements could somehow make up for my lost dreams. Michael, in a rare, outspoken moment, asked if I ever regretted it, his brow furrowed with a concern that mirrored my own internal battles. These conversations, these moments of being seen, they were complex. They brought a certain comfort, knowing my children saw and, to some extent, understood. But they also stirred up the embers of old longings, reminding me of that vibrant life I'd willingly stepped away from. The family story, as they came to understand it, was one of parental sacrifice, a story that undoubtedly shaped their values. They both developed a strong work ethic, a deep sense of responsibility, and a real appreciation for the opportunities they'd been given. Sarah often wrote articles that stood up for the underdog, that gave a voice to the voiceless, perhaps an unconscious echo of the voice I'd quieted in myself. Michael designed buildings that weren't just functional, but also had a sense of community and humanity. The emotional ripples went beyond just gratitude or guilt. It instilled in them, I think, a certain resilience, a knowledge that life often throws difficult choices your way, and that love often means putting others first. Whether this was an entirely positive thing for them is a question I still turn over in my mind. Did it place an unspoken expectation on them to also sacrifice, to always prioritize family above all else? Or did it maybe inspire them to chase their own dreams with even more passion, knowing the price that could be paid for putting them off? The echoes of my choice definitely resonated in their lives, shaping how they saw things, their ambitions, and their understanding of what it means to love and to build a future. As the years went by, it wasn't just my children growing up, but grandchildren arriving too. And it was here, in this third generation, that I really began to see the ripple effects of that long-ago decision in their fullest, most unexpected bloom. The sacrifices Arthur and I had made, the stability we'd fought so hard for, hadn't just launched our children into successful lives. It had also created this fertile ground for our grandchildren's potential to really blossom. Sarah's daughter, Emily, inherited her mother's love for words, but with this fierce, uninhibited confidence that I, at her age, had only dreamed of. She wrote poetry and short stories, and even started a school newspaper. Watching her put her thoughts into words with such clarity and passion, it was like seeing a brighter, bolder version of my younger self. There was no hesitation in her, no feeling that her dreams were some kind of indulgence. They were just part of who she was, something to be chased with energy. And Sarah, remembering her own mother's unfulfilled literary dreams, encouraged Emily every step of the way, giving her resources and unwavering support. It was as if Sarah was determined that her daughter would have the opportunities that I had given up. Michael's son, Tom, was a whirlwind of energy and curiosity, his mind constantly questioning, exploring, and building. He didn't just play with blocks, he designed these elaborate structures, explaining their engineering with a wisdom that was surprising for his age. Michael, now a successful architect, saw his own passion reflected in his son and nurtured it with patient guidance and shared excitement. He'd take Tom to construction sites, explain blueprints, and gift him advanced building sets, fostering a dream that was, in many ways, an extension of his own. These weren't just talented kids, they were kids growing up with a sense of possibility, a belief in their own potential that was, in part, a legacy of the security their grandparents had worked so hard to provide. The financial struggles that had defined my early adulthood were ancient history for them. They had access to good schools, enriching activities, and a supportive family that encouraged them to explore their interests without that heavy weight of money worries. The stories of our family's past, including the sacrifices made, became part of their upbringing, not as tales of sadness, but as lessons in perseverance and how important family is. Sarah would tell Emily about my old notebooks full of stories, and Michael would explain to Tom how his grandmother's steady job had helped keep the family going during tough times. These stories weren't meant to make them feel guilty, but to give them a sense of gratitude and an understanding of the foundations their own privileged lives were built on. Seeing my grandchildren thrive, so confident and free in what they were doing, brought a really complex mix of emotions. Immense pride, of course, and a deep, quiet joy. Their successes felt like a distant, but very real, return on the investment of my sacrificed dreams. It was as if the creative energy I had pushed down had somehow resurfaced, channeled, and amplified in these bright young souls. Yet, mixed in with this joy was a faint, bittersweet ache. A reminder of the artist I might have become, the writer whose voice remained largely unheard. It was a poignant realization that the ripple effects of my choice weren't just about their gains, but also about my enduring, though softened, loss. The multi-generational impact was undeniable. The decision made in a small kitchen, fueled by love and necessity, had echoed through the decades, shaping not just the lives of my children, but also the opportunities and outlook of my grandchildren. They were living, in some ways, the dreams I couldn't. And in their vibrant, hopeful lives, I found a measure of peace, a sense that the trade, though costly, had indeed paved the way for a future far richer than I could have imagined at that desperate crossroads. The tree I had planted in shadow was now, in their generation, reaching its fullest, most glorious bloom in the sun. And so, here I am, in the autumn of my life. The house is quieter now. Arthur, my steady companion through it all, is gone, and the daily buzz of raising a family has softened into the gentle rhythm of memories and reflections. The grandchildren visit, bringing bursts of youthful energy that fill these rooms with laughter. But in the quiet spaces in between, the question always comes back. It sits with me in my favorite armchair, whispers in the rustling leaves outside my window, and stares back at me from the mirror. Elara, was it worth it? There's no simple answer, no neat balance sheet where joys and sorrows can be added up to give a final number. It's a question that cuts deep, right to the core of what it means to live a fulfilling life. What defines value? and what success really is. If I weigh it in terms of my own personal ambitions, of those dreams that burned so fiercely when I was young, then the answer leans towards a painful no. The books I long to write are still mostly unwritten, their characters and plots just faded echoes in my mind. The world I wanted to explore is, for the most part, still unseen by my own eyes. That vibrant, creative part of me, the Elara who dreamed of literary fame and distant horizons, was undeniably sacrificed. There are days when the ghost of that unlived life feels especially real, a shadow of regret that even the brightest moments can't quite chase away. The what-ifs can be tough company in the quiet hours. What if I'd found a way to do both? What if I'd been braver, more resourceful, and less willing to give in? But then, I shift the scales. I look at the legacy, not of books on a shelf, but of lives I helped nurture, of futures I helped make possible. I see Sarah, a respected journalist, using her words to make a difference, a power I once wanted for myself, but now see her wielding with such skill and heart. I see Michael designing buildings that blend beauty and usefulness, creating spaces where communities can thrive. I hear their voices, full of love and respect, acknowledging the foundation they were given. And that's a profound, undeniable yes. And then there are the grandchildren. Emily, with her own literary talent blossoming, already more confident and published in her school magazines than I ever dared to be. And Tom, with his sharp, curious mind, already sketching blueprints for a future that looks so bright. They're living proof that the sacrifices weren't for nothing, that they cleared the way for new dreams to grow and flourish. Their successes, their unbridled potential. These feel like the truest measure of worth. When Emily reads me a poem she's written, her eyes shining with passion, or when Tom explains his latest intricate Lego creation with such infectious excitement, a warmth spreads through me that's more fulfilling than any personal award I might have achieved. In those moments, the answer is a resounding, heartfelt yes. The emotional journey has been huge, constant back and forth between what was given up and what was gained. There is grief, yes, a persistent ache for that lost part of myself. But there is also deep joy, profound love, and an unexpected sense of purpose I found in helping others chase their dreams. Perhaps the most honest answer to, was it worth it, isn't a definite yes or no, but a complex, nuanced acceptance of the life that I actually lived. It's about acknowledging the cost, the deep personal sacrifice, without downplaying the immense value of what was created instead. A thriving family, generations touched by that choice, futures made possible. That inner conflict, once a raging storm, has softened into more of a quiet conversation with myself. I understand now that life rarely offers perfect choices, only trade-offs. I traded my individual dreams for a collective future. Was it a fair trade? Maybe not, if you're looking at it through the eyes of youthful ambition. But in the bigger picture of a life lived for love and family, it holds a different kind of beauty, a different kind of worth. The question might always linger, that quiet hum beneath everything, but it doesn't torment me anymore. Instead, it reminds me of how deeply our lives are connected, of the enduring power of sacrifice, and of the complex, often bittersweet ways we find meaning. Nakis. Section 9. Finding meaning in the tapestry. Trying to find meaning in a life shaped by such a huge sacrifice isn't like reaching a final destination. It's more like constantly weaving together all these different threads. Joy, sorrow, regret, and fulfillment. The tapestry of my life isn't the one I originally planned to create, with bold strokes of personal achievement and exotic colors of adventure. Instead, it's a richer, more complicated design. interwoven with the bright threads of my children's and grandchildren's lives, a real testament to shared history and lasting love. Finding meaning hasn't been about erasing the sense of loss from my own deferred dreams. That loss is part of the pattern, a poignant detail that adds depth and honesty to the whole picture. It's about recognizing that the sacrifice, while so personal and undeniably costly, wasn't an ending, but a change of direction. It channeled my creative energies, my hopes, and my ambitions into nurturing the potential in others. And in their growth, in their happiness, I found a reflection of that diverted purpose. When Sarah published her first major investigative piece, a story that actually brought about positive change in her community, I felt the surge of pride so profound it was almost as if I'd written it myself. When Michael won an award for an innovative, sustainable building design, I saw in his creation a beauty and usefulness that really resonated with my own deepest values. These weren't my accomplishments, yet they felt like my legacy. Those multi-generational ripple effects, once just an idea, are now real, tangible things. Emily, my granddaughter, now talks about wanting to be a writer, like Grandma could have been. But even more so, she says it with this fierce determination that makes me smile. A determination not weighed down by the money worries that shaped my choices. Tom, with his boundless curiosity, is already exploring science and engineering with a freedom I could only have wished for my own children in their early years. Their potential is a direct result of the stability and opportunities that my sacrifice helped create. This isn't to say my choice was the only reason, but it was a big one, a cornerstone upon which their brighter futures were built. There's a quiet peace that comes with this understanding, a sense of acceptance that has settled in over the years. The what-ifs haven't completely disappeared, but they don't have the same power to hurt anymore. Instead, they remind me of how complex life's choices are and the different forms that fulfillment can take. My fulfillment wasn't found on the bestseller list or in a passport stamped with exotic places. It was found in the laughter of my children around the dinner table, in the proud tears I shed at their graduations, in the warmth of a grandchild's hug, and in the knowledge that my life, though different from my early dreams, had been profoundly purposeful. This whole emotional journey has taught me that sacrifice isn't always about loss. It can also be about transformation. It transformed me from an aspiring artist into a matriarch, a nurturer, a quiet supporter of others' dreams. And in that role, I discovered strengths I didn't know I had and experienced joys I could never have predicted. The love that drove my decision for my parents, for Arthur, for my children, became the bedrock of my life, a source of lasting strength and meaning. It's a love that has echoed through generations, shaping our family's values and our collective story. So, was it worth it? The answer isn't in a single word, but in the rich, complex, and deeply human tapestry of my life. It's in the thriving lives of my family, in the love that binds us, and in the quiet understanding that sometimes the most profound dreams we achieve are not our own, but those we help make possible for others. The meaning isn't in the dream I traded, but in the future that was built instead. And that future, I can now say with a full heart, is a legacy worth every sacrifice. My story is just one of so many similar journeys, of choices made at life's countless crossroads. Maybe it echoes a decision you faced, a dream you've held on to, or a sacrifice you've made or seen. I'd love for you to share your own thoughts in the comments below. What sacrifices have shaped your life or the lives of the people you love? How do you figure out the worth of choices like these? Your stories matter. Life rarely turns out as neatly as the stories we write for ourselves when we're young and idealistic, does it? It's a messy, unpredictable, and often challenging journey, full of detours and unexpected stops. My own path, taking a sharp turn from the one I'd imagined, taught me some really profound truths. It taught me that dreams can change, that purpose can be found in the most surprising places, and that the impact of our choices can ripple out far beyond our own individual lives. The decision to trade my personal ambitions for my family's future was the defining moment of my life. It was a choice soaked in love, driven by necessity, and shadowed by a lingering sense of what I'd lost personally. Yet, through the years, I've come to understand that the worth of a life isn't just measured by chasing our own individual dreams, but also by what we give to others, by the love we share, and by the legacy we build, piece by painstaking piece. If there is one thing I hope you take away from my story, it's a recognition of the profound and often silent sacrifices that shape families and build futures. It's an encouragement to look for meaning not just in grand achievements, but in the quiet acts of love and selflessness that, like ripples in a pond, spread outwards, touching lives in ways we might never fully see. The tapestry of each life is unique, woven with threads of joy, sorrow, ambition, and sacrifice. And every thread, every choice, adds to its intricate and ultimate beauty. Thank you for listening.